Yo, today we're going to be making these anemone in Blender. It's pretty simple using the hair particle system. There's a lot of versatility with it, so you can kind of shape them however you want in a bunch of different shapes. I'm going to be going over the 3 different types in the beginning that I made. All of them kind of have different settings for them. So first we'll go over this orange one. To start off, you're going to need some sort of mesh that you can use that's going to project these hairs out of it. For this, we'll just use a mesh circle. I'll take it, go into edit mode and extrude all of them, scale them in. So we have this disc here, and then we're going to go into the hair particles and add a hair system. I'm going to change the number down to around 200 and the hair length down to 1 because it's too long for now. And you can see they're upside down too. So I'm just going to select everything and press Alt N. That's going to flip the normal so the hair will go on the other side. So after that, we're going to want to switch these segments. Anywhere from like 12 to 20 is good. The higher, the more wiggly they're going to be. The lower, the more stiff they're going to be. Then we're going to click hair dynamics. This is what's going to make the hair actually simulate. Go into render here and change the steps to 8. And go into viewport display and change these to 8. So next we're going to go to field weights and turn the gravity all the way down. And one more thing before we start adding force fields. We'll go into our render settings up here, the render tab, and go down to curves. And on default, it's rounded ribbons. If you go into the rendered view, the hairs, when they spawn in on something, they're flat. The bottom of these hairs aren't going to look like they're really connected to this plane. Change this to 3D curves, and those will now be cylindrical. So go back to the hair particle system, and now we'll start playing with the thickness of the hair. So we'll go into the hair shapes over here now. You want to kind of play with the diameter scale if you want them to be tapered around the edges, or if you just want them to be rounded around the edges. A little closer up example here for the strand shape. So you can see, you play with this one and the tip, you can kind of get it to look a bit rounded. Diameter scale. It's really a matter just playing around with these until it looks good. If right now I'm just going to increase the root and probably put the strand shape down to 0. So mine are going to look a little bit tapered like this. So now if you press play, set it back to the start and press play, nothing happens. So we're going to want to add that force field. So go into force fields and add a turbulence. And if you copy this tutorial, the way that I've done it so far, the default settings should make it move a little bit. So really just turning up these settings are going to make it wave around a lot more. So the only downside about this is that the hairs don't collide with each other. So I don't think that's a thing that's actually in Blender. You can try doing this with a cloth simulation. I've tried that, but it's really laggy and it takes too long. I've found hair simulations almost real time. You just run into them not colliding with each other. Although there's kind of a lot going on in these, so you don't really notice them colliding. If you want, you could still have an object go in and collide, turning on a collision modifier, but these hairs themselves won't collide with each other. The way you can kind of trick that is just adding a bit less numbers. The more numbers you add, the more they're going to overlap each other and go through each other. So now that we have the simulation and the thickness, I might turn up the segments a bit. Maybe I'll go 18, and this will make them wave around a bit more. This is all editable, so you can take this original shape and just grab these edges, these inner edges, and maybe just scale them up and bring them up a bit, and you can change where those hairs are emitting from. So you can do this if it's not baked. If it's baked, you'll just have to redo the bake. Other than that, you can duplicate it even and change the shape however you want, and they'll still react the same way. So getting onto the materials. When you add a material, you might get this error up here. The way that I found that can fix that is just going into the shader and then going back to rendered view, and then you should be able to change the colors and have your material. So I've tried getting that kind of translucent look with subsurface, but for some reason with hairs, the subsurface just makes them black or dark. The way I found to go around that is just using transmission. So turn the transmission up to like 0.85 and turn the roughness up. And if we just add a quick little spotlight for a light, quick little spotlight like that, you can see with the transmission and the roughness, you kind of do get that like glowing edge effect. So you can change this to whatever color you want. Maybe change mine to blue. And you can just do one color like this, or you can add in a curve info node and a color ramp. if you take the intercept and drag it into the color ramp, you can get like a two-tone from these hairs. It's almost like ambient occlusion, but it renders and works a lot faster. Change these to blue. And also, if you want to hide this base plane, just go back to the hair simulation and viewport display and uncheck show emitter. And now you can replace that with a rock or a model, whatever you have there. So that's the basic setup for the anemone and everything you need to know. Now I'll go into some specifics for the other two. Once you have this, and if you do want the little dots on the end of each hair, there's no way to do that in the particle system or geometry nodes. It doesn't work with hair simulations. So the way around that is just add whatever you want to instance on the end. So for example, I'll do an icosphere. You're going to want to go into that modifier tab and click particle instance. So now we'll click that hair simulation and click create along paths and keep shape. Might not show up, so just make sure you have the icosphere selected and go Control A and apply the scale. So now they're going to be on the end of each of those hairs. And if they're too big, just go into edit mode and scale them. Make sure you're in edit mode, because if you go in object mode and you scale them, it's going to scale the instances as a whole. So just make sure you do it in edit mode. So now you have those little dots on the end. So for the third example, this is this one with the hairs that kind of bend over on themselves. A little bit of a balancing game with the values. Turn down the segments, just change them down to maybe 12. And you're going to want to turn the hair length up. So change the hair length to 2, for example, so twice as long. They're up there now, but they're not bending over. So even though I said in the beginning, we're going to turn the gravity down for the past two examples, this is the one where you do have the gravity on. You don't want it all the way up. They'll just sink down. So somewhere between 0.2 and 0.3 is good. Do 0.25. So you can see now they start to bend over a bit, and you can leave it like this if you want. I'm just going to change a few more things. The pin goal strength is how much of the hair is going to be solid up until a certain point. And then up until that certain point, it's going to react to whatever force field you have. For example, 0.8 pin goal will only make them bend up here, and 0.1 pin goal, they'll bend down here. Kind of difficult to tell, but it's a lot of back and forth. I'll do 0.005. I think that's good. So now with the vertex mass, this is going to make them bend over more. You can almost think of it as making the tips heavier. You don't want to make it too heavy though, because they'll start freaking out and spinning around. 0.5 for this scale is pretty good. So you can see now they're starting to bend down, and I might just add a bit more gravity. And this one I found does take a little bit of time to set and get that good position. I just extend the frames here to a little bit longer than the other two examples, because it takes around 100 frames for them to really drop down. So that's pretty much all the examples. It's pretty simple to make, and you can get some really cool results out of it. If you guys have any questions, just throw them down in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next video.